In this lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how JavaScript can be used to do some form validation. Now, a lot of the new HTML5 controls we've looked at for forms, like required, and then those special types like email address and things like that, do some of the validation for us. But we might be looking for certain values, or we might, again, I'm going to show you how to check to make sure something's not blank. And then if they fill in the form incorrectly, we can go ahead and either change some properties on the form. We might change the border of a required field to red with a document dot right next to it showing where they need to fill that in, or in this case we're going to do alerts because the code's a little bit simpler. But before we do that, we're going to talk about a concept called the Boolean operators. And the Boolean operators are just a fancy way of talking about making multiple decisions, or multiple comparisons, I guess is a better way to say it. So back to the other day, or the last lesson where we talked about, you watched the Weather Channel, and it says there's an 80% chance of rain. So you say, if there's a better than 50% chance of rain, then I'm going to take my umbrella. But if you're going out for a quick break, you might add another comparison there. You might say, if the Weather Channel says it's greater than 50%, and there are storm clouds in the area when I look out my window, then I'm taking my umbrella. And so what the Boolean operators allow us to do is they allow us to look at these multiple comparisons. And so one of the things that we might do is what's called an ampersand, which is the and operator. It means two criteria must be true. So in an if statement, I might say, if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then go off and do those things. So both of these things must be true. A must be greater than B, and B must be greater than C. So in this case, if A is equal to 6, and B is equal to 4, and C is equal to 9, then this would not report back as a true statement. A is greater than B, 6 is greater than 4, so we're good to go. But also B must be greater than C. In this case, 4 is not greater than C, so this whole if statement wouldn't run. It would go to the else, or if there's no else, it would just not ignore those statements completely. And so the and operators make us choose both of the criteria must be met. Now we have what's called a pipe, which is to the right of your right curly brace, so 3 down from the P key. You have to hit the shift to get to it, but it's an up and down line. And what this allows us to do is put in an or. And what the or allows us to do is it allows us to choose one of the two things. So if either of these things are true, then the statement would execute. So if A is greater than B, A is greater than B, so yay, it's right. It will still evaluate, I'm sorry, I need to change this to or, and then it would still evaluate this and return a false, but it's looking for a true on either of these. And these are going to be used when you need to check ways that are things that people are entering within a range. So if they enter something and you want to know if it is greater than 3 and less than 37, then you might want to do an ampersand there in that comparison. And in our example here, we'll use one of these Boolean operators just to show you how they work. So let's pop on over to Dreamweaver and take a look at the form. And this one again is just going to be for validation. They're going to enter their name and they're going to enter their age, and they're going to click our button here that says submit, even though it's been changed to a regular button because we're going to use the on-click event. And we're going to validate to make sure that they've actually filled in something in the name, and then we're going to validate to make sure that their age is also filled in, but we're also going to validate to make sure that their age is over a certain level. So I'm just going to pick 21. It makes you think I'm doing something crazy here, but again, there are lots of websites or things like that where you might want to keep children out because you don't want them buying things with mom's credit cards, not anything a little more nefarious than that. So let's go back to the code view. And we're going to go ahead and start with an on click on this button, but we're actually going to change this in a little bit to show you a little bit fancier way to do your form validation. So we're going to just say on click, we're going to call a function named check form. So we're going to go up to the head section of the document. We're going to go ahead and put in our script tags. And close those script tags so we don't forget to do that. And then we're going to go ahead and start our function. So the name of the function we're going to create is check form. That's what we just called. And we enclose those statements and open and closing curly braces. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go through this step by step. So we're going to get the two things off the form so we can do the comparisons. So we're going to var their name is going to be equal to what's on the document on form 1 in the text field named fname with a capital N, and we're going to grab the value of that. So we grab that value, store it in our variable. We're going to do the same thing with their age. We're going to go to the document, go to the form, find the age text box, and we're going to take the value from that. So now that we have those two things, we can go ahead and do our comparison. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see if their name is blank. So I'm going to start my if statement, and in parentheses I do my comparison or my condition. So I'm going to say if their name is equal, don't forget we need to do a double equal sign instead of a single equal sign. And we're going to put double quote, and this is the way we can tell it if their name is equal to nothing, in quotes. Then open curly brace and close curly brace. If that's the case, then we want an alert to go up that says you must fill in the name box. Okay, so that's our first thing we're going to check. And then we're going to come in with a second if statement. So we've checked their name. Now we're going to say if their age, whoops, wrong parentheses, if their age is equal to double quotes, or their age is less than 21, then we're going to alert you must provide an age that is greater than 21. So it's checking two things. If their age is equal to nothing, or their age is less than 21, then we don't want them coming into their site. So what happens is if they fill out everything correctly, then neither of these statements actually run. If their name has something in it, it'll never run this. If their age has something in it and it's greater than 21, it'll never run this. And so your form then would submit, theoretically. We need to do a little bit of work to get that set up. So let's go ahead and test this just to show you how it works. We're going to preview in Firefox. And we're going to go ahead and just hit the submit button right off the bat. So we should get a pop-up window that says you must fill in the name box, and you must provide an age that is greater than 21. Of course, I have a typo. It should be THAN instead of THEN, but we'll ignore that. So let's do our name. Submit. So I passed the name validation, but I didn't pass the age that is greater than 21. So I'm Leah, and let's pretend like I'm 18. Haha. Submit. Again, I get the error that's 21. Let's go ahead and put in my real age. It should have said I was lying instead. I click submit, and this time, theoretically, the form submits and I go on my way. So that's the simple approach to form validation, but there's one problem we have with this, is we actually don't have the form submitting. Let's say that we did all this validation because we actually wanted this to submit to an email or to a database or something like this. So if we have a real action up here, mail to lschult@tarleton.edu, the problem is we don't have a submit button. Remember, a button of type submit is actually what causes this action to execute. So by us putting an on click for this checks form, what happens is it goes up here, it goes through the validation, and if it validates, then it stops. It never actually runs that action. So we actually need to make some changes to this. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually have that button changed to a submit button. So I'm going to go down here and change the type from button to submit. And I'm going to take the on-click event off. So right now, the way we have it is our function would never run. What would happen is they'd fill in the form, they'd click the submit button, and it would call this action up here. So what we need to do is we need to intervene. And the way we're going to intervene is we're going to come up here on our form, and we're going to use the event handler on submit. And what it does is it jumps in there before the action happens and does that action. And we have to set up a little communication between the results of our function running and whether the form should submit or not. Because if they made a mistake and we want them to redo the form, we obviously don't want the action to execute. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called return values. And so what I'm going to do when I call this function, I'm going to say that it is equal to return and the name of our form. And so what we'll do is we will change our function slightly to tell it to not only execute the output, but to spit back a true or false value to this on submit call. So if true comes back, then that means that this function ran well, and go ahead and submit the action and submit the form. If a false comes back, then that is a message that there was something wrong and that the action doesn't need to run until a value of true comes back. And so what we do is we can come up here and we can put in return false, because they didn't fill in anything, so we don't want the form to submit. We want to return false and stop the action from being executed. And we'll do the same thing here, return false. Now this causes a little bit of a problem when our it causes a little bit of a logic problem, because when a return happens, it's actually going to end the function when it hits that return, and it would never do this second validation. So we would actually probably need to organize the way we do our function checking, but just for this purpose we're going to leave it alone. And so what that does now is when they click the submit button, this event handler is activated. We call the check form function, and we expect to receive a value back from it. And if we receive a true, then we'll submit it. If we receive a false, then we won't submit, or we won't call the action. So if they mess up on filling in their name, we return the false. If they do that correctly, but they don't meet our age requirements here, then it'll also return a false and not submit the form. So let's just go ahead and take a peek. You're not going to see much difference on how this functions, but let's just go ahead and look at it. When I submit, it says I must fill in the name box. Again, when I submit, age that's greater than that. So I submit an age greater than that, and what would happen behind the scenes is you would see that submit.